When it comes to the SilverHawks, where there's a will, there's a way. Here's your look at the brand new Super 7 SilverHawks Ultimate's Steelwill. One half of the Hart twins, Sergeant Will Hart aka Steelwill and his cyborg modifications, give him enhanced speed, agility, and strength to even take on the mighty Mumbo Jumbo. This made-to-order 7-scale fully articulated Silverhawk Ultimate figure of Steelwill features premium detail and comes with interchangeable heads and hands, and a variety of other accessories, including weapons, wings, and a pair of stronghold figures. Steelwill isn't just muscle and steel jawline, he also has the smarts to invent the Silverhawks. Here's a hero with all hearts. Before we get a closer look at the brand new SilverHawks Ultimate's Steelwill, I'm going to get the tape measure going and figure out just how tall the figure stands. Now, he is going to be bigger than the earlier looked at Bluegrass, but just by how much? Stay tuned, you'll find out. In the meantime, though, Steelwill stands, I chuckle to myself, Steelwill stands 6.5 inches in height, or the figure's going to be a little over 16 centimeters tall. You can now stop your stay tuning because we're going to bring in a couple figures right now for comparisons. While I earlier may have thought that Steelwill was the taller of the two figures, Bluegrass, including his hat, is in fact a taller figure. He's leaner, granted, than Steelwill. Steelwill is still a bigger, bulkier looking figure comparisons. One thing you may also notice as well is that Steelwill has a much darker blue color scheme. He's not as light, not as fair colored blue when it comes to his armor as what we got with Bluegrass earlier. Here's a figure though that towers over still both of them. Here's what the figures both look like with Monstar. Monstar is easily the tallest of the three, as again it should be. He is the tallest in the cartoon, at least of the characters. And when it comes to certainly though the Silverhawks themselves, Steelwill isn't as tall as Bluegrass, something I thought before. Running through Steelwill's accessories in no real particular order, first the figure comes included with two variations of Stronghold. Stronghold being his bird. I never really liked, honestly, that the Silverhawks would later get each of their own birds. I always thought it took a little away from Tallyhawk. Tallyhawk was sort of their version of Scooby-Doo. It would be like each of Mystery Incorporated all having their own dog, each having similar traits. How ridiculous would that be? I always liked, again, Tallyhawk being individual, unique, and on his own. But in either case, though, we have ourselves Stronghold. Stronghold's a nice-looking bird. It always looked less also like a falcon and looked more like a blue jay. And if you think for yourself for a second, blue jays aren't really a thing that's intimidating. You've never been around an angry blue jay. Believe you me, I'm speaking from example. In this case, Stronghold does have perched in this pose with wings folded down. If you, though, prefer a version of Stronghold where the wings are fanned out, then you get that option available as well. The bodies are very similar to one another, big, giant talons. Look at the size of these things. Could scoop and carry away a tiny little toddler. One thing, though, with the wings, there's no posability on these at all. There's no what seems to be head articulation either. And the difference between the two heads, the fanned-out wings of Stronghold has a screeching head sculpt, while the more perched version of Stronghold does have the mouth closed. In both the cases, though, you can take the bird and attach it onto the arm of Steelwill. Let's just clamp it on there. And there ain't no chance that that thing's coming loose. Once it's firmly attached onto Steelwill's arm, good luck. It's not going to fall off. Now, of course, I can pull it off for right now. I'm going to put that to the side, and it's going to look a little awkward anyways, that his arm's going to be out like this. Let's have a look at the rest of the accessories. I guess we can look a little bit at the weapons, too. The figure comes included with the Steamer Blaster with removable effect. If you don't prefer your Steamer Blaster, I mean, why would you want to have a blast effect always on the end of it? You can easily remove it. The thing about it, though, is it's very... I wanted to turn it, obviously I wanted to turn it this way, but the way they've actually designed the blast effect, it can only go this way. That's strange. I mean, you look at it and you think for a second, no, man, that's like a cylinder post. It isn't. It's actually half mooned. You can see that the bottom of it is flat. And the way they attaches, it only attaches one way. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time taking up in this review, looking at the reasons why I have a problem with the steamer blaster's effect. But again, it's strange that it doesn't. I would like to have, again, rotated it this way. Just can't do that. Anyways, the blast effect is done here with a translucent yellow plastic. The rest of the steamer is very nicely painted here, sort of more in a military green with a little bit of detailing done to the top here in yellow, and the main barrel, as big as it may be, painted nicely in black. Does fit into his hands, although it doesn't fit in these hands right now, but don't worry. To come included with Steelwill, you get yourself a couple of swapped out hands that can fit not only the steamer, but the other weapon that we're about to have a look at as well. Just fit that into his hands. There we go. And he does sort of have a trigger firing finger, although you have to kind of move it far enough down there. And it just barely rests on what I would believe to be the trigger of the steamer. There we go, right about there. The figure also, just put that to the side. I really like the fact that they would have actually taken the time to include this. It comes included also with the Screamer Blaster. The Screamer Blaster actually comes with, like the steamer, the Screamer comes with 2 variations of mouth. The mouth chomping on the front actually is not something that does chomp because it's permanently molded like this. But it's a really cool looking gun, a reference to one of the episodes in the series. You can remove it, just simply take the one that's chomping off of it and instead replace it with this. If not for something to be displayed with a SilverHawk, I would find definitely a purpose to display this with the Clown Prince of Crime. That totally looks like something that the Joker would carry around with him. The blaster itself, the Screamer Blaster, does have some nice blue detailing done to it, some additional deco of yellow, and the barrel, again, very long and broad in a nice gray plastic. I'm going to move those to the side as well. Okay, then on to like the things that sort of would go with the territory of a SilverHawks figure. Steelwill, for example, will come with 3 swapped out heads. He'll also come with a swapped out wing, so if you prefer to display your SilverHawk figure in a flight pose, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. The figure does have the means to at least do that. First of which, I guess we should also look at, actually I'm going to talk a little bit about more of that in a second. The figure also comes include some hands. Now, I want to talk about these hands. You know, for a second when I was grabbing these hands, because I already had looked at Bluegrass earlier and I still have some of his hands here on the display, I actually thought I had grabbed for a second Bluegrass's hands because they seem so small. That was until, of course, then I picked up Steelwill and I looked at the hands that he has. These hands are tiny. They're certainly not proportioned, I feel, for the rest of the figure's body. I feel like he should have much, much bigger hands than what he has right now. And that's the case across the board. The gripping hand that we looked at earlier that held the steamer, is a small, small hand. Even the closed fist also is a small hand. And also he has this hand, which again, looks like almost for a second like it's Bluegrass's, but just to bring in Bluegrass's so you can see, I'm not making this up. This is Bluegrass's hand, and while Bluegrass's is still a small hand, I feel like Steelwill's hand should be a lot bigger. He does also have a flying hand, and I guess really while we're also on the topic of that, he does also have a flying hand for the other side also as well. He does have, again, a gripping hand. So again, pretty much what you're getting here with this side, you're getting also on this side too. He has a closed fist, and he also has a gripping hand also as well. So as small as they may be, at least he does get a lot of them. The figure also comes included with 2 variations of head sculpt. Of course, 3 technically if you count the one that's currently on his body. We're going to look at the figure's head sculpt right now with a neutral head sculpt. You know, I feel, sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I feel if they ever were to do a SilverHawks live action movie, yes please. You know who I think I would cast as Steelwill? Wardlow. Wardlow from AEW. Some of you may not even know who I'm talking about. Look up Wardlow and then look at Steelwill here and not tell me that does not look like Wardlow. You get 2 expressions. You get the more happier expression, smiling face. He's just defeated Monstar and his minions. Or you have just a more stoic looking pose. I really like the head sculpts in both the cases. If though you want to have him flying in space, obviously he's going to suffocate. So you're going to want to also, let's just bring in the other head sculpt here. Comes with the football helmet head sculpt. One thing you will want to be careful, though, is when you're swapping out the head for Steelwill. This front bar is actually, well, it's a very twitchy kind of plastic. It's barely just attached for the sides there, and it's also a very thin plastic. So you want to make sure you're not putting any pressure against this when you're swapping out the heads. To swap out the heads, by the way, you're simply just going to remove it divorce it from the ball joint. And again, don't put it pressure on the front. Rather, instead, put the pressure on the top and wiggle it down as best you can get it down. And that's what he looks like. Now, obviously, if you wanted to display these guys on the shelf in flight pose, here's one other problem I really have with this line. So far, I'm only basing it really from Steelwill, but it's going to be consistent across the board when we look at the rest of the SilverHawks characters, except for Bluegrass. Bluegrass doesn't have the wings. But with all these characters, if you're going to be giving them swapped out arms to accommodate flight, why wouldn't, where do you think I'm going with this? Why do you think that they would have not included a flight stand? Not something necessarily that would have pegged it onto the figure where you would have had a very obvious hole anywhere on the figure, but at the very least, they could have included a flight stand, because if you're going to be doing all the things I'm about to do, you'd like to be able to at least display this guy on a shelf. Now, one good thing with the articulation being as good as it is on the head, you can at least move the head up and get him in a flight pose, if only you had yourself a flight stand. To change out the hands, by the way, also, let me just put the figure down here for a second. The figure does come included with these wings. Now, the wings themselves are permanently attached to the arms, so there's no way of removing them. That's good, at least. You simply just pop off. That's not really a noise a popping sound would make, but you're going to pop off either one of these from the sides of his torso. You're going to replace it with these ones. While you may think to yourself, that's going to be a lot of problems. Aren't I going to running the risk of breaking a peg? No, actually not. Rather opposite. It was very easy, in fact, to remove the arms. Just pop them completely away from the torso. If you can overlook the very ugly looking, almost off, clear-colored slot, you easily can remove the arms on both the sides. Now, this arm was the harder of the two to remove, but it still does remove. And then you're just going to simply replace it then with the wings, the wing arms. Just attach it in place. The problem with wing arms like this is that you can only really have them posed in certain ways. If you display them in any which way other than out, well, let's hold on a second before I finish that thought. You can technically have the wings down too. You don't have to have them always committed to being up top. But if you did want to bring the wings out like this, yeah, that looks great. But where's the display stand that goes along with this? A clear neck, a waist clip, something along those lines, so that you could actually have displayed your SilverHawks in flight pose. One thing also, too, that comes included with these now being in place, you can see there's holes here on the top. Like in the cartoon, he does have these blast effects that I honestly lost the first time I took these guys out of their tray. I dropped them on the floor. I heard I dropped something on the floor. Immediately looked down, and sure enough, they were right there. Oh, good thing I didn't lose those. These do plug into place, but when you plug them in, you don't plug them in by this peg right here. Rather, actually, instead, you flip it around to the other way, and you slot it into those holes. You do it on the one side, just sort of dowel it in there. And then he has like the beam effect that blasts out from his shoulders. To add on to that, you get the starburst effect that sort of attaches then onto the end of it. I say sort of, it does. I probably should have done this the opposite way. Let's just put this around here first. Let's put this and attach this. See, there's a peg right there. See, there's a hole right there on the inside of the snowflake. Well, connect the two like that. And then from there, now we can do this. Now that just plugs into the little hole there on the top of his shoulder. It doesn't do it very well, though, and there's been a couple of times already that I've attempted to put that into his shoulder and leave it, and it's sort of like Bluegrass's musical effect that attaches onto his guitar fell off. This has fallen off a couple of times already, and then you can simply just rinse and repeat and do the exact same thing on the other side, all fine and good, once again, if they can include a display stand. Let's put those to the side. Again, it also looks a little out of place that he doesn't have hands, so let's go ahead and grab ourselves a couple of needed hands here. Just attach those in as small as they... Wow, they're so small hands. We'll do the exact same thing on the other side also as well. There we go. And then we've got ourselves Steelwill, with the head now very, very well articulated. You can actually get him in a pretty cool looking pose, if you're just, of course, holding this the whole time. For the detail for the rest of the figure, I guess we can kind of keep things the way that they are right now. Moving the arms, I will say from time to time, does result in popping off the pegs. You just have to kind of pop them back in there. But nice overall looking figure. Detailing is really good on this one, as already mentioned when we looked at comparing this guy to Bluegrass. The color of the blue is definitely a lot richer here, a much darker blue than we got before. Just again, bring in Bluegrass so you guys can see. This one is a much lighter looking blue than the darker blue that we get here for Bluegrass. Some really nice additional airbrushing that they've added for a little bit of darker blue. So you can kind of see it in some of the areas around his thigh. I also noticed too, when you have it against the light source, and if I just kind of move it back and forth a little bit, you kind of see a little bit of sort of pearlescent speckling, a little bit of glitter sort of sparkling with the light bouncing off of it. It's a really neat looking way they've colored the figure. Now, again, this guy is not using chrome vac finish. I don't prefer it myself, and I'm really glad that they didn't. I like that these look more like their cartoon counterparts. I don't want them to look like the toys. That's myself. That's my own opinion. You can certainly weigh your thoughts in down below. It's got a little band right there. It's a little bit different color than the rest of the figure's body, but overall, again, just a really nice looking figure, even though he has tiny little hands. Oh my goodness, look at the size of these hands. For the articulation, though, on Steelwill, sticking with the head that we have right now, head rotates all the way around. I'm glad to see they went very generous when it came to the head articulation, allotted for long enough posts that you can easily move the head up, move the head down, and rock it back and forth as well. Shoulders come out, again, every once in a while as you're doing this, you may have the arm popping out. Probably shouldn't be doing the wings in this for this case, but you can rotate them all the way around. There is a bicep swivel. And even though these ones here, I probably should really revert back to the other arms. You know what? I'm going to keep one wing on. I'm going to put the other arm in place. The reasoning why I'm doing this is because with these arms, you're actually still getting the elbow articulation. You're still getting the bicep swivel. With these arms, you're only getting just the swivel here. You're losing, unfortunately, the elbow articulation. It's gone. Bye-bye. So it's only going to be on the one side there. Hands rotate all the way around. The figure has an upper torso ball joint. Not the best of articulation in the top of the torso, I will admit, but it still does a decent enough job if you want to rotate it back and forth. Not as much up and down. The lower end of the figure's body, though, the abdomen area, does have an abdomen articulated ball joint. This, once again, like the bluegrass we looked at before, is a softer plastic. So, you know, it does a decent enough job. It doesn't, again, look very much at all like a figure diaper. Legs, in this case, are on ball hinge joints, so you can hinge those outward. Take the legs, move them forward. You can move them back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. Only possessing a single hinge on the knee, which really is tight on this figure. But unlike the bluegrass that had the looser arms, I don't have any loose issues at all so far, knock on wood, with Steelwill here. Technically, he does have, I should have stopped myself saying that. He does have a little bit of looseness in his ankles, but it's not bad at all. Once again, we can let's go ahead and pop the arm back off. We'll replace it back with the wing arm. Probably going to wrap things up in final looks, even though I don't technically have a display stand. I'm going to display it still, steel heart, with the wings and the helmet intact. Honestly, I think when it comes to displaying this figure, simply just because I don't have a display stand or a flight stand, because once again, Super7 didn't decide to include one with these figures, I think I'm probably going to end up displaying Steelwill with the unhelmeted head sculpt and then doing away with the wings altogether. And then once again, we can bring in bluegrass for your comparisons. Nice looking figures, though. You know, again, I know where people are coming from, stating the fact that they really wish that these figures could have had chrome finish. You know, on the one end, chrome finish would have certainly harked back to the original 80s toy line the SilverHawks would have been originally from. But I also think that chrome finish is just going to wreak havoc when it comes to displaying these figures down long term. That kind of thing would start to flake, start to chip, start to fall off. I'm glad they also made these closer looking like the cartoon. That's, again, only my own opinion. But I really like the look of Steelwill. I'm looking forward to getting Steel Hearts when she eventually is getting released. But we are at least 2 characters down of the SilverHawks, leaving the rest to eventually come out in future waves. Wrapping up things, and in your final looks here of the new SilverHawks Ultimates, Steelwill, I've got him displayed with his wings fanned out. Good luck, though, actually doing anything with that. While I do, again, love the fact that it would have been out of place not to include these winged arms, and instead of actually having to worry about dealing with attaching the wings manually to slotted spaces underneath the arms, Super7 says, you know what, we would be frustrated doing that. Collectors would be frustrated trying to swap things out. Instead, they decided it was just a lot easier, and I'm glad that they did, have included instead swapped out entire arms. You just pop pop those babies off the torso, pop the new ones in, and you're good to go. Yeah, I wish, though, that they could have included, though, a display stand. And I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about this when we look at the future SilverHawk figure, so apologies well in advance that it's going to be something I'm probably going to talk about regularly. I didn't mention it at all with Bluegrass, simply just because, again, like Bluegrass, like in the series, never had wings, never had the means of flight. That's why he had the Mirage. But when it came to the other SilverHawks, if it's finding good to include the wings, why not go a little further on that, Super7, and not include a flight stand? Something that could clip around the figure's waist. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about that. The figure, though, itself is really nicely done. Yeah, it's a little strange that he has such small-looking hands. I can't help but keep looking at his hands. They're tiny. And yet the figure, you know, even though proportionally his hands seem a little out of place, the rest of the figure's proportions look pretty good. He's a bigger bulkier character, as he should be also in the series, and it translates really well to a good-looking figure too. The blast effects that attach onto his shoulders, what I find rather ironic about them, is that they attach into the shoulders, right? But if you look at any promotional images, he's actually got, there's one image that Super7 did use where he's actually blasting one of the shots out from his arm, but he doesn't have a wing on that side of his arm. They actually have his arm kind of bent inward. They sort of fooled some of the people by not including the wing. The wing isn't, though, removable. It's, like I said, attached to the arm. It's not going anywhere. But what do you guys think of Steelwill? Let me know down below in the comments section. And of the SilverHawks characters, both good and bad, who are your favorite characters in the cartoon? Let me know down below in the comments section. Also, as well, if you guys are interested to pick up Steelwill, pick up Bluegrass, pick up Monstar, or also the other figure that we are going to be looking at in the upcoming review, yes, you can also click the link down below in the video description that, yes, will take you on over to Entertainment Earth's website, to which that's actually where I ended up picking up these figures. As soon as it was available, literally, I went to their site one day, and I think it was just recently stocked. I put in my order right away because this was a set. This was a line of figures I have been so desperately waiting for Super7 to release. We got announced SilverHawks like how long ago? 1 year, 2 years ago at most? It's been a long time. Long time coming, but I would say so far from what I've gotten, had a look at with the 3 figures we've done so far from Wave 2, I'm happy that it was worth the wait. Could have used certainly these figures a lot earlier than what we actually did get them, but I will say from what my experiences have been with this line so far, I'm really happy with this so far in Wave 2. Looking forward to eventually when we get the Wave 1, and looking forward to future waves as they are coming out. As a side note, one figure I'm really looking forward to seeing in hand is Mumbo Jumbo. Mumbo Jumbo was always one of my favorite characters. Going back to what I said earlier about what's your favorite character, bad guys and good guys, one of my favorite characters of the bad guys was Mumbo Jumbo. I even just like saying Mumbo Jumbo. Certainly as well, guys, everybody who's watching this video, there are going to be, of course, more reviews coming your way. The key to making sure that you're not missing out on any of this, first of all, if you like this video, if you don't mind me asking, because I hate to ask you guys, but if you certainly did enjoy this video, why not throw it a like? Why not? Just throw it out to the wind. Hopefully somebody's going to catch it with their butterfly net. And certainly as well, if you did want to stay on board and see more videos from this channel, from this person behind the camera, then make sure if you haven't already done so that you're hitting the subscribe button down below, and that you're also turning on the bell notification. There will be, of course, as mentioned already, the rest of the review, the rest of the SilverHawks reviews coming your way still. I know we only have one left, so that's going to be coming your way as well, not to mention. There's also going to be some other Super7 stuff coming your way. I can't say really what it is. It's G.I. Joe. But there's going to be more coming your way as well. Lots of stuff. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.